Welcome into SEC football and beyond. I'm Neil McCready, Chris Landry with me as well. It is Tuesday, December the 1st. We've made it to the 12th in what presumably will be the final month of 2020. The finish line in sight. We've almost made it. Yeah, that's all you can say. 2020 has just 1 month left in it, unless we are in for a surprise where they make an announcement that they're just going to continue to add months to 2020 so that we can be tortured. So, Chris, how are you?
I am doing well. It is, we mentioned this a couple of times. It's normally the type week, the week after Thanksgiving, where you kind of look and say, well, boy, the college season is coming and it's gone. And it hasn't completely, because you have conference championship weekend, and then you start, then the Army Navy, then you see the bowl games, but it kind of like, that's it. Not so much this year. It makes for a fun December as you think about this. You got 3 games left, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, certainly in the SEC, we're going to have that. Things again, hopefully, will allow 3 more games. So it's going to be a fun December. It's going to take us right to Christmas.
Yeah, no, December's going to be fun. I think, knock on wood, I think we're going to get the games in. I think the league's determined to get the games in. I think the league has gotten the message across to its member institutions that they need to get the games in. And so far, people are playing. And if you look at some of the numbers, a lot of teams are playing under 53. But we were looking at snap counts from the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss and Mississippi State. And if you take out, guys that just played a snap or two or specialist or whatnot, both teams only played 30 some odd players. You got to have 80 something people to play a game. The NFL proves that not to be the case week after week after week.
Yeah, and high school too.
Yeah, high school too. So you can do it. I suspect if Greg Sankey and company could go back in time, they would have been a little harsher about that, and we would probably be close to done right now. But as it stands, like you said, we're going to get a weekend and 3 weekends in December that we normally don't get, and we're going to get them this time. So a lot to get to from the weekend that was. Alabama just mauled Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Texas A&M beat LSU 20-7. Florida rolled all over Kentucky 34-10. Georgia, with JT Daniels at quarterback, whipped South Carolina. Missouri just humiliated Vanderbilt in a game that the game itself got really overshadowed by Sarah Fuller becoming the first female player in Power 5 history. And then Ole Miss beat Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl here in Oxford 31-24. So we'll get to all of those games. Derek Mason fired on Sunday. We'll talk about the Vanderbilt job. Chris, a lot of talk still lingering out there about Auburn, about Tennessee, that, hey, don't be shocked if these coaching changes don't continue. LSU had a high-profile opt-out, I guess, on Sunday. Curious to see what you think about the Tigers situation in a minute. So a whole lot to get to, really, and then there's a whole slate of games this weekend coming up. Texas A&M's at Auburn. Arkansas's at Missouri. Florida meets Tennessee. Vanderbilt heads to Georgia. South Carolina is at Kentucky. And Alabama is at LSU. Ole Miss and Mississippi State both have weekends off that were moved to open dates to accommodate other games. Ole Miss and Mississippi State will make up those games later in December, is my understanding. So the SEC, by the way, Chris, announced yesterday that it will release the rest of the schedule on Friday, and it will release all TV times for the rest of the season on Sunday. So the unknown is almost over.
Yeah, it certainly this past week went very much according to form. The colossal blowout by Missouri of Vanderbilt, I thought that game might be a tad closer, but every other game pretty much went the way I expected. A&M did not play well, and I know there was some bad weather there, and we'll get to that, but pretty much to form. And I would say that the rest of the way is going to be pretty much the same, pretty much close to form. I don't expect any real, certainly no massive upsets, and I don't see it happening. Although I do think that Auburn A&M could be interesting, maybe more so, and it really is going to depend upon A&M, because I think there's some things that were unearthed in that A&M game that really shows, in the LSU game, that shows that, listen, A&M's good. Their program is in great shape. The future is good. But in terms of this year, they are not a national playoff caliber team. And if they get there, it would be like probably many before that have gotten to that point and really get their comeuppance, because they've got some limitations there that I think were, again, unearthed in that LSU game. But it's going to be interesting. Vanderbilt situation. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that. The game, but certainly with the job opening, I don't know. Neil, I don't get the feeling from Tennessee or Auburn that anything's going to happen there. We still, though, got 3 games left. So as of right now, there's nothing going to be done, but I think people are anticipating the worst, as they always do. But what if? Well, okay, let's just kind of let the what ifs happen. I don't think anything is completely off the table with anybody, but I don't get the the impression that even if it goes bad, particularly at Tennessee. But we shall see. It's going to be interesting. And so much for the look, I still think we're going to have less openings than normal years. But as we've seen with a few of them, it's not going to stop some from making a move if they feel like that they need to do it, and they will go into the money vault and figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah. The one at Vanderbilt, the only thing that was surprising about Derek Mason's firing, I had been told, and you and I talked about this, I think, over the last couple of weeks, I had been told that both sides had pretty much resigned themselves to the relationship being over, that this was not going to be some deal where either side was clamoring for the other to stay. This was a divorce, if you will, where both parties had decided that it was best to move on. And I was a little surprised just by the timing of it, given the fact that Vanderbilt spent the weekend really getting the praise of the national media, getting the whole – I don't even want to get into it because I've made people mad with what I've said about it, and it's just not worth it to keep beating the horse. But, there was a lot of talk about Sarah Fuller throughout the day. It's very rare that you lose 41-0 and you're the one getting the post-game interview on the field. It's very rare that you lose 41-0 and the next day the national media is holding a teleconference with one of your players. That's just very rare. But it's also very rare that on a day that you're getting a lot of positive attention, that's when you fire your coach.
Yeah.
With just two, I guess what Vanderbilt has 2 games left. That just felt odd to me, but it was over. It's very clear that Derek Mason had lost his team. It was very clear that there was nowhere left for Derek Mason and Vanderbilt to go. And in a completely lost season, it doesn't really matter who finishes at the top. And if getting Derek out of there makes it easier for players, makes it easier for coaches, makes it just easier for anyone, then why not, I suppose.
I think that the Derek Mason situation, once, they lost their athletic director, and let's just call it what it is. This Candace Story Lee is just another puppet for the administration that says, yeah, just go ahead and do your thing, run the quasi intramural program, and don't bother us over here here at Kirkland Hall. Kirkland is where Vanderbilt. That's where the ivory tower offices are, and they thumb their nose up at athletics. And look, I think the big thing with Vanderbilt is that could be a good job. It is not a good job. And I talked to a couple of people that I know that I think are candidates, and we've talked about the job and over time. And I know at Landry Football, I'll get into it in greater details. But the reality is that job is not a good job because they don't care enough about the football program to put forth what it takes to be successful. Vanderbilt has money. They just choose to not spend it on football, which is fine. It's their money. It's a private school. I don't care.
Sure.
Just don't just hire coaches and fire coaches and say, yeah, we care. Look, we just fired the coach. That's not how it works. And it's going to get tougher and tougher to get someone that is worth their salt, because if you go there, it's a career killer. You will get your head coaching job, get the money, invest it wisely, because you're not going to coach again. Now, maybe you get the right person that gets the Will Muschamp treatment, where maybe they'll say, you know what, nobody wins at Vanderbilt, and he's got enough of a reputation. Maybe you get that second job, but that stain is there. Look, Donardo and Franklin left there. Most people that get fired and you don't hear from again. I thought Bobby Johnson did decent things there, all things considered, what Vanderbilt is. So it is not a job that I would recommend any of my friends in coaching to take, because it is not one you could survive. I mean, in terms of a career.
So let me throw the name that I'm hearing a lot, and I do think there are some tea leaves that indicate that there is at least some mutual interest, or perhaps he's using it as some leverage. If you just follow Twitter followers and Twitter, who suddenly people follow and unfollow and all of that stuff, it's pretty obvious that Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina has at least some interest in the job. And if you listen to Candace Lee discuss the qualities she's looking for in a head football coach, she seemed to be talking about him yesterday. Is there any chance that it's this cut and dried, that it's him?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that he's certainly somebody that would be a really good get for them. The question is, if you're Jamie Chadwell, I'll repeat what I just said. Nice job there. You go to Vanderbilt and you won't be heard from again. You'll lose, and that's your one chance of being a head coach. What I told one of the candidates that's kind of listed on a lot of lists, that's got a background there, I said, look, you'd be better off replacing Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, or getting a really good Conference USA job or American Athletic, because what you can do is you can win and compete there.
Yeah.
I mean, Tulane has better facilities than Vanderbilt. It's not in the SEC, but that's the point. You go in with lesser facilities than a Tulane, and you got to compete in the SEC where there are Taj Mahals, and you have a hard time competing. So my point is, all you ever want, I always ask a bunch of coaches, what do you want? All I want's a chance. You don't get a chance at Vanderbilt. That's the problem. Exactly. You don't have a chance at Vanderbilt. And that's the issue. So, look, I mean, if you just want to have head coach by your name, and if you feel like a lot of these guys feels like it's going to be different when I get there, and that's where naivete just comes in. I'm going to be able to do it. It's just like somebody that thinks that they're going to change a player. Look, I mean, God bless them. They'll get one of them to bite. So I don't know that I would predict that this person or that person won't take it. My advice to Jamie Chadwell is that would be a huge mistake, because you're in a position to get a really good job. You're on pace to getting a better job than Vanderbilt, even at the Power 5 level. But, there are many Group of 5 jobs that are better than the Vanderbilt job that can get you ultimately where you want to go. And if you go to Vanderbilt, it's one thing to say, you know what? I love Nashville. I love Vanderbilt. I went to school at Vanderbilt or whatever. The problem is you will not be in a position to be able to successfully have enough footing there to keep that job very long. it's just going to be one of those things where you're just not going to be able to keep it. So I think it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a really tough job. I think it's an impossible job today. I don't think they're committed to winning in any sport. The only sport they're committed to is baseball, and that's really because Tim Corbin, the baseball coach there, runs it himself. It's that the uniform says Vanderbilt, but what the uniform really should say is Corbin, and I mean that as a compliment because he runs that program completely separate of the building you just referenced. He doesn't even go in that building. He doesn't want his players going in that building. It's a completely separate deal. And so I mean that as a compliment. He's turned Vanderbilt baseball into an absolute elite, maybe the elite national power. And that's a credit to him. But just because he does that doesn't mean that you can do it in other sports, because in fact, that's not happening in other sports. And this isn't a knock on Sarah Fuller, or certainly a knock on females or anything like that. I mean, I'm the father of 2 daughters. That being said, that deal over the weekend was at best not particularly well thought out, in my opinion. And that's just kind of all. You can feel free to talk about it for the next.
Yeah,
41.
no, I don't. I mean, I don't. I'm not gonna. I had be honest with you. I haven't really addressed it at all in my forum, just because it is what it is, and that is it was. Listen, I'm really happy. And by the way, I did check. Kaylee Nida back in 2002, she was at Colorado. She never got in a game, but then she transferred to New Mexico, and she kicked a couple of extra points. And then there have been a couple of others, but none at the Power 5 level. I think the concept of, look, if there is a young lady that's capable of kicking and can help, I'm all for that. That's fine. I think this was clearly a publicity stunt. This was clearly made to be like the focal point. I think to the point where the SEC naming her one of the SEC Players of the Week just makes a mock. It's patronizing is what it is. Because I think that she's probably embarrassed by that. I think if you want to say, and they have done it, that this is a hallmark event, she's done something that's phenomenal, that's great. But to say she was co-SEC Player of the Week or one of them is very patronizing to her. I mean, this is someone that's a very accomplished by all accounts as a soccer player. So I mean, to sit there and say, I mean, that says just by showing up, we're going to give you that. I think there's been more than enough publicity to say it is what it is. Just it's a great feat, a great accomplishment. It's great for more than anything, more for young girls to say, look, I've got an option. I can be anything. Her message was phenomenal. She handled herself well. Everybody else basically's approach has been patronizing. And I think that's the way I see it. But, and look, I don't know. I don't know if my understanding, she has not kicked football, so she hasn't much practice time. With time and with development, she might be pretty good if she wants to do that. I do know this. I only saw about 12 of her kicks in practice. And the story of the game, what the story of the game to me was? How pathetic does Vanderbilt, how pathetic are they? They could not score a touchdown to even try, give her an extra point try. She couldn't get in field goal range. I mean, how pathetic was Vanderbilt? That's the story of the game.
Well, and to me, the most interesting thing about the Vanderbilt game, and we'll get into these other games in a minute, but that Vanderbilt had actually shown a pulse in previous weeks, against.
Yes, I said it was going to be I said it would be, maybe a 2-possession game. They quit. So it's pretty obvious that they quit. I mean, that's exactly. And then like South Carolina, they quit. And that's another story that's just really bugging me. And college football is in a bad way, because now we're seeing guys, as I said they would, it started with quitting. I'm not going to play in the bowl. And that's what it's quitting. If I opt out my fanny.
Yeah,
it's quitting.
Yeah, of course.
But anyway, to finish with Vanderbilt situation, I thought, I mean, Missouri played well. Vanderbilt quit, and in some ways, it just was give them some publicity, and Vanderbilt could be known for something. And you know what? Not anybody talked about the fact that they scored no points. It was all about Sarah. So it was a positive, and then you know that's that's where we are with it. But yeah, I did watch her kick. Boy, again with training, I saw the pregame the kicks, and obviously I've been scouting for 30 plus years now. Boy, she doesn't have much of a leg, in terms of kicking the extra point areas. They were so low, but that just could be technique alterations too that we'll see. I don't think, again, the storyline is how good of a field goal kicking future she has. Was that it was symbolic that, hey, it's great. And I think we're seeing it now with young ladies getting into, because they have forms to play football now in some female leagues, and we're seeing it with them getting into coaching and administration, and that's all wonderful. So that part is good. But I think sometimes, again, you can get patronizing to the point where, oh my goodness, give her some respect. She's a world-class athlete. Don't treat her like she's a 2-year-old patting her on the head and, yeah, we give you I just thought it was overdone. Anyway, that's my take on it. But I've got real concerns and more about players. I got bigger issues with players that are now quitting in college football. It is a major, major problem. And this year, it's become more of an excuse.
Let's jump into some games. We'll start with the Iron Bowl. Alabama wins 42-13. Nick Saban wasn't there. It didn't matter. Mac Jones had a big game. Devonta Smith had a big game. Alabama's defense improving week over week over week, which is typically what Alabama's defenses do. For Auburn, it was a comeuppance. You knew this was coming. You knew that Alabama was going to win this game handedly. Auburn scores a little bit late to make it sound a little bit better than it was, but this was a beatdown from very early on. Alabama, you and I have said this for weeks now, they continue to prove us right. Alabama's the best team in the country.
Yeah, I text Nick at night. I said 2 words: Wally Pip. I can't tell you what he responded to me, but
I will guess it was 2 words.
Yeah, it was 3, but yeah, it was. No, it was in hillbilly slang. It was 4. No, it is was exactly like I thought. In studying the tape, the thing that impresses me about Alabama is, aside from all the talent, they do such a great job setting up defenses. Offensively, I'm speaking of, first of all, and they just do a really good job. The subtle nuances in their route concepts, the ability to be able to work the pump fake simultaneous, and it's taught this way, with the turning back of the head to where the play where Devonta Smith was wide open. They say, well, nobody covering. Oh yeah, there was a coverage there. That was a bite. Mr. Smoke got smoked because he bit on the play fake, and he had the outside contain, and it was like, yeah. So it wasn't like, well, how could you not cover the guy? Oh no, there was a coverage concept. It just bit hard on it. You've got to be very careful. And the other thing that jumps out at me, nobody does a better job with double moves than Alabama. But you can't run. You look at a team that's good with double moves at any level, it starts up front in the offensive line. You can't work double moves if you don't have time, if you don't have protection. They've got that. The offensive line has been phenomenal. It's been the best in college football. Notre Dame's is really good in the run game. Alabama's is good in grading out both run and the pass. Dominant performance. It's going to be hard for anybody to beat them. And the defense is getting better. Boy, they are doing a good job of coming up, leveraging the run, and it's going to be quite the. I am curious to see how their defense handles and plays Florida. I mean, that's going to be fun to watch and see how that matches up, and that's going to give somewhat of an indicator because I don't really think there's a better offense that they'll play throughout the rest of the season. That's including Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. I think that's a real good challenge. Although, now let me just say that Clemson's defense is a lot better than Florida, so I'm not going to say that. But that on that side of the ball is going to be a lot of fun. But no, there's no question about it. Alabama's on a different level, and I think we'll see that through certainly the remainder of the regular season.
Texas A&M and LSU met in College Station. This game did not go the way I thought it would go. I thought it would be a lot higher scoring than this. Texas A&M 20, LSU 7. LSU scores late. It was 20-0 for the longest time. I was surprised that A&M's offense struggled as much as it did. On the flip side, give their defense a ton of credit. They absolutely stifled LSU.
The defense is really good. The offensive line for A&M is really good. But here's the Achilles heel that I alluded to earlier. They can't get open. Okay, so LSU played press man, and this is where that's obviously Alabama killed them, and this is early part of the year, and this is where against really good teams, and LSU played again tight man coverage, and they got two guys that are pretty good at getting open, but not elite. And if you take those away, no one else can get open. So the quarterback was shut down. And, Spiller got loose a couple of times. It's what they've got to get to that next level is they've got to get guys that can get open, that can beat press coverage. And if you bracket and roll your coverage to one and bracket another, they really don't have consistent guys that can beat you. And one of them is the tight end. So, it rained quite a bit the start of the second half. And I sense in the game Jimbo knew that LSU wasn't going to score. And as you said, they just scored in a mop-up. I just think Jimbo said, I can't screw with, turning the football over and giving LSU because at 20-0, I mean, you turn the football over, it's 2014 like nothing, and they haven't earned it, but they're in a game now. And I just thought he kind of said, we just got to protect the win. And it was not the type of performance. Look, I get it for the purposes of style points, it wasn't really good.
And they're playing style points right now. They need style.
That's exactly right. And then there's a lot of talk about they didn't get it. That they're not going to make the playoffs unless there's a lot of help and there's no other options. They're not. Look, they got a couple more games still to finish.
3.
Right? Yeah, but I mean Auburn and not Tennessee. A blowout win over Auburn would be impressive. Because Alabama just did it, and if you're able to do it, you could write off. Well, the LSU game was an anomaly. It was right, you can write. But if they,
they get Ole Miss in 2 weeks, and that's,
if they're able to blow those, if they're able to really slow down Ole Miss, they should be able to score a lot of points on Ole Miss. Though they should be able to score a lot of points on Tennessee. If they're able to do it also against Auburn, again, from the impressive meter, then they're able to do it. But they got to really over-impress. Look, they're not going to make it unless things collapse around them. But I think they're a good team. I think, and I've always felt that they are well coached. I think they're being built properly. I think that's the program that's the most intriguing in the West outside of Alabama. That's the one that I'm most comfortable saying consistently year in and year out they're going to be there because of how they're building it. But they're not. I think Jimbo does a really good job with quarterbacks because they were able to run the football. I think he's gotten as much out of Kellen Mond as you can get. I don't think that's a real strength, which to me says an awful lot. When you're able to work around your quarterback as well as they had. But that's kind of how I saw the game. Very unimpressed with A&M's offense in that game.
Yeah, I actually think their game against Auburn has a chance to get squirrely, and I've said this a couple of times. This is me covering Auburn all these years. I was a beat writer covering Auburn for 6 years. I was a columnist in that state for another 4. So I've just seen this happen a lot. Late in a season, especially at home, as an underdog, Auburn finds ways to win these kinds of games, and I just wouldn't be surprised. I just wouldn't be surprised at all if Texas A&M looks up in the fourth quarter and it's like we are in a cat fight here with Auburn, and then like you said, that next week, if you're Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, it's your shot to impact the national race. Let it all hang out, and they can score. Ole Miss can score, and from a optics standpoint, I think A&M is at a place where for them to get in, they've got to be super impressive, and I just don't know that the setup is there for them to do. I don't know that they can blow out Auburn. I don't know that they can blow out Ole Miss. I think they can blow out Tennessee. But I question whether they can blow out those other two teams, and they need blowouts in those games.
They don't have an explosive offense. A&M is a team that plays more around the line of scrimmage. So if they're able to beat Auburn and Ole Miss and Tennessee, it's going to be the ability to compress them defensively. Again, there's a couple of those teams on that schedule, mainly Ole Miss, and to some degree Auburn, that may be able to score some points, but it's going to be about A&M controlling the football, running the football. And then I think there's an ability, because some of those teams will play a little bit more zone coverage. That's where you get the tight end open, and that's where their offense can be a little bit more effective. But I think against the elite teams, which these teams that they're playing are not elite, they struggle. And so I think A&M's good. I think they're really good. I think they're well coached. I think they're good at the line of scrimmage. And look, I think that, to your point, and I kind of referenced it earlier, Auburn, they're still always murmuring about Gus and his future, and there always is, it seems like. And I don't think they're going to do anything this year, but it is so much, I call Gus Lazarus. I mean, no one just comes back from the dead. It'd be just like him to pull the upset over A&M, and it's doable because A&M is not going to explode on you. The game, by definition, is probably going to be close unless you really start losing possessions and turn it over and give them short fields. That's when they can kind of blow it out.
Florida beats Kentucky 34-10. I don't know how much of this you watched. I watched a good bit of it. Florida, I thought, played kind of bored. They got ahead. They had the game in hand. I mean, it was back and forth, but you could tell all along Florida was going to win the game. And I thought the Gators were a little bored. And then once they pulled away and made it comfortable, I thought they got bored again. Give Kentucky some credit on the heels of a 60-point loss at Alabama. They showed up and they were competitive and they played hard. But Florida's a really good team that is lining up for a huge opportunity on December the 19th. They will be a considerable underdog against Alabama, but the truth is they don't have to be better than Alabama all year. They've got to be better than Alabama one time, and if they do, they're in the tournament. I don't think it's going to happen, but they're pointing towards that game, and you could see that a little bit on Saturday, I thought.
Yeah, although I would say the one thing that's been consistent is their defense is not good.
Right.
It's not good. And, it's one thing to be bored in this game. Their defense has been bored all year long. I mean, their defense can't get off blocks. And Kentucky just controlled the football. And that's why it was, they didn't have the football enough on offense because Kentucky controlled the football. Now, Kentucky can't do enough with it. They can't score enough points. That's going to be the concern. I'm going to save it to when the time comes, but I just throw it out right now because everybody's wanting to know is like, Florida can't run the football very well, and they don't try to, and their defense struggles. They're going to really struggle defensively against Alabama, but more so than, giving up 70 points. It's, it's not that. Alabama's going to be able to run the football on them and keep their offense off the field, much like Kentucky was able to do for parts of the game and some other people. But Alabama has the explosive playmaking ability to finish drives with points, and I think that's a lot tougher matchup. And I think there's a greater separation between Alabama and Florida than maybe most people think. But again, got a couple of games before for each team. We don't know about the health of the teams, but I still look at this Florida team, and everybody says, well, they got a couple more weeks to get the kinks out. Florida's defense doesn't have kinks. Okay, they got dents. They got big dents. They don't have difference-making guys up front. They are very average at best on defense, and they got to work around it, pure and simple. And I think you saw some of the frustration with Dan and Todd Grantham got into it a little bit in the sidelines. That's just part of, and I kind of feel for Dodd because it's probably thinking, well, what the bleep do you want me to do? I mean, I'm kind of, he wants to be real aggressive. He can't hold up, but you got to take chances to get pressure. It ain't a whole lot there. There's I always say, Neil, when you got the play sheet and you're a defensive coordinator, I can't rush the passer. I can't cover when I bring blitz. There's not a spot on that for, it's kind of like on offense. Shoot, we can't block. We can't protect. Yeah, there's not a spot that says we suck on all these things. This is going to work because that would have been up at front. It's tough sometimes. I think they're very average, and you're right. They're going to have a game in which, against an Alabama type, where they're going to have to get an early lead, and Alabama's going to have to, fritter the ball away, turn it over. They're going to have to throw the ball to them because they don't get stops.
Yeah,
they can get some picks or some turnovers, and that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to sell out, and you know what happens when you sell out? You're going to give up big plays.
Yeah, they have to have Alabama have a very un-Alabama-like game, which doesn't happen very often. Yep. Georgia beat South Carolina 45-16. Let's start with this. What's the timeline from what you're hearing on when South Carolina will make a hire? I'll tell you, we talked about this last week. I hear Shane Beamer's name more and more and more and more with this job. Doesn't mean that he's the guy, but boy, he's the guy that's got smoke around him in Columbia right now.
Yeah, first of all, they have spoken to a lot of people. They have contacted a lot of people. I mean, people that were not so much in the media. Like, I don't know if any of the media brought out that Scott Satterfield was approached, and God, who else? I'm gonna have to look at my notes. There are 2-3 people that hadn't been out in the media that they actually tried to approach and want to talk to, and so doing their due diligence. I don't think they're in a rush. I think you heard Candace Story-Lee at Vanderbilt talk about, well, we got the early signing day, and that certainly makes you can't rush a hire. Yeah. But you got certainly what must be done, you need to do it. I don't think they're in the rush, and I do think that they're in a position if Shane's who they want, and you're right, he's been mentioned probably the most, at least publicly. Then I know he wants the job. They're big on the connection, and the connection with the program and with Steve. And look, I mean, here's the thing about it, and I take this for what you want. I take this, however you want to take it. Even though he's not with the program anymore, there's and he's an ambassador in Florida. Steve Spurrier, when he left, I mean, he basically told them to hire Will Muschamp.
Yeah,
Will's, he's really pushing Shane Beamer, and Shane, work for him and all that. It's great, and if that's what they want to do, got speed. It's not the direction I would go. Not that I'm against Shane. I just think there are better options. But the timetable is probably going to be. It's not a rush, in a couple of weeks, and I think they'll get that done. But we are, as we turn December 1st, we are getting close to that signing day, and I would think in a couple of weeks we'd have something, if not sooner.
Yeah, 15 days until the signing period starts.
Yep.
So, if you wait till December the 19th for those games to end to hire a coach, you're really
Well,
in that late period, and it's hard.
to me, if it is Shane, that can be wrapped up this week.
Yeah.
If they are also wanting to speak to maybe a couple of other people before, people want to say, well, because what will end up happening probably is they'll probably end up hiring Shane. I'm just going to take a guess. Let's just say they end up hiring Shane. Well, why'd you wait so long? You could have hired him. Because they wanted to speak to a couple of other people to make sure. And then, so sometimes the timing, I don't think they're going to make the hire just so they can get it done as soon as they can before signing day. They want to get the hire right first, which I think everyone could understand that. And the only way to really do that is to interview a lot of people. And real quick, because I know it been involved in a lot of coaching search stuff, I always encourage interview as many people as possible. And if you're a candidate, interview as many places as possible. You don't realize how much you get as an administrator or as a GM or front office executive in NFL. The more you interview different people about your program, your job, what you're doing, what people think of it, is instrumental. And the guy I learned that the most was from Al Davis. I was a young guy, and I thought I was getting interviewed by Al Davis, and I'm like, wow. And I realized all I was doing is getting used for information on evaluating where I was, and everything from evaluating their holder. And it's a great resource to learn, and on big picture. But I just say get fresh notebooks and a lot of pens. Take a lot of notes. You can learn a lot about your program, and you can also learn a lot about who would be good people to put on staffs. And believe it or not, you end up finding your next coach, or you never know what goes on down there. And I say it all along that when Bill Cowher got hired by the Steelers, it was because of the interview he had with the Browns. When the Browns hired Belichick, Cowher had such a good interview. They wanted to hire Belichick off the Giant staff, but it was that interview and the relationship with Art Modell and the Rooneys. That's what got Bill Cowher the interview, and he nailed it in that interview, and he ended up getting a Steeler job because of it. That gets out there. So just some thought about interviews in general.
On the Georgia end, Georgia gets 45 points. They've kind of found themselves offensively. It's too late for this year, but going into the 2021 season, a little bit of something to build on with JT Daniels, the quarterback, right?
Yeah, and they shut it down. He only threw it 16 times. They didn't really. Now that's another team that's quit. South Carolina is just nothing there, and that's not Will. Will doesn't run it up, and they're running the football, control the game. It wasn't really. It was superiority there. This game was probably as ugly as the Vanderbilt Missouri game. At least you had a storyline in the Missouri game. This storyline was, it was really bad.
Kirby didn't want to run it up on Mike Bobo.
No, he doesn't run, and he doesn't really run it up on anybody. But good friends, his teammate. No, you're right. There's no question about that.
We talked about Missouri and Vanderbilt. Let's touch this real quick. I think Elijah Drinkwitz does not get the credit that he deserves. They have very quietly had a really nice first season there.
Outstanding.
Done a good job.
Outstanding. Remember this: all these coaching hires that are opening now. The two that people scratch their head, Eli Drinkwitz. Eli Drinkwitz. And I laugh because somebody called him, he was saying the other day, somebody called him Elijah. he said, they can't even pronounce my name right. Eli Drinkwitz and Sam Pittman were the two that said, what are they doing?
Yeah.
And it's just they're really doing a good job. And curious to see what they can do in recruiting and build off of this. But no, I think he's right up there with Sam. Sam has got more of in terms of coach of the year. I really think they've probably done as much with anybody. Because look, the reality is it's not where the award is. Saban coaches and probably does the best job every year coaching. but you're not going to get that type of an award. I think it's between those two, and I think that Eli's done as good a job as Sam. Sam is a little bit more personable, and it's a little bit more of a story because, look, I mean, Arkansas hadn't won a game in 3 years. So it could go either way, and probably going to depend upon how this ends up.
The other game we haven't talked about, the Egg Bowl here in Oxford. Ole Miss beats Mississippi State 31-24. The Rebels now 4-4. I think Lane Kiffin could win it, but he'd have to beat A&M and LSU to do it. If he went 6-4 at Ole Miss this year, he'd get strong consideration for that award. But what Ole Miss has done consistently week in and week out is played pretty solid offense. They had some opportunities early in this game, Chris, to make it a laugher, and they didn't do it. And to Mississippi State's credit, they kind of got into a little bit of a groove in the second quarter, into the second half. Made it a very interesting game, ball in the air at the last play of the game with the chance for Mississippi State to tie it or go for two and try to win it. Ball hits the ground. Mississippi State loses the Golden Egg in Oxford. What did you think of the Egg Bowl?
You brought up something good. Lane certainly should be under consideration. And you know what? Dan Mullen and Jimbo Fisher have done really good jobs too with their teams, even though they may not get favorites for the award. They've done, along with Alabama, some of the best coaching jobs.
Yeah.
I want to give Mississippi State some credit. I thought they played hard, they fought, and it kind of almost was like this game kind of rose up to them. I mean, it realized, the importance of it, and even though there's not this hate, I just think there was a lot of that this was a big game feel for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they fought. I thought Ole Miss was, clearly the better team going in. I still think they were the better team going. I don't think they played their best, and I think defensively they're really, really vulnerable. But I thought they, at times, came up with some big plays, but they gave up more than – look, Mississippi State had more success offensively than they've had against most people, and I think that has a lot to do with Ole Miss and in their shortcomings on defense. But, the thing about it when you're an Ole Miss and you had the type of game they did against Alabama, there's this thought of that's what you're going to get every week. And, the offense hadn't been as good, particularly in the red zone in some of the key games. That was the difference. And, look, you're not going to get that every week, but they're still better. And if you're Lane, even though it may not be the golden mission, 1-0 and 0-1 in the Egg Bowl, and it does matter.
Yeah, Ole Miss had a key drive, fourth quarter of that game.
Yep.
Mississippi State had pulled within 3.
Yep.
And Ole Miss 8. I don't remember the exact amount. 4 minutes or so off the clock. It was a 77-yard drive, if I recall correctly, maybe 9 plays, and they ended it by running it in with Jerry Ely, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
I thought that was a big moment for their program under Kiffin. That in a moment where if it gets away, boy, it's going to be a really tough loss. To just kind of put the game in control, you're doing it your way, driving down the field and ending it. I thought that was a big moment for Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin.
It's a finish. You got to have a finished drive. It's what you say in practice, guys. We got to drive to win the game. We've got to finish it. We need to come in. We need to close it out. And they did that, and they were able to do that. And what I like about their offense is more complete than Mississippi State. So they can run it. They can run tempo up and down and get outside. I think they're more complete offensively, which is why I like them going in. I like them coming out. And, I like what they're doing offensively, and I think Lane is onto some good things there.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're off to a good start. I think that you're seeing them get some recruiting momentum right now, and we'll see. We'll see. Like you said, they've got a couple of games left. They don't play this weekend. They've got a couple of dates left on the calendar. A&M, and then at LSU. And I want to get to LSU here in a second because it's about to get rough in Baton Rouge, in my opinion. And I'm curious what you thought of the high-profile opt-out on Sunday. You called it quitting. No one's arguing that. LSU's got Alabama coming in this weekend. Alabama's a 28-point favorite, and the smart money is all over the Crimson Tide on this one. Then they've got to go, I believe, to Florida, and then they're going to come home on the 19th and play an Ole Miss team that has absolutely zip to lose with the high-profile offense. I tweeted this last night. It's got a chance to get ugly in December in Baton Rouge. What are you're down there? I know you have a kind of a finger on the pulse of that program. What's going on?
Well, it has been ugly. I mean, all year long, there's a sense that there is a lot of quit. I mean, guys opting out, or as I say, quitting. A lot of that was pretty reflective. I mean, if you look at and look, I thought the defense did some good things against Arkansas, and they did some good things this past week against A&M. But the reality is, there's quite a bit of a lack of discipline. And people say, well, what happened last year? I don't get it. And real quick, last year was a bit of a perfect storm, but you had great leadership amongst players, mainly the quarterback. So everything kind of fell in. Ed is mostly a recruiter and a salesman. And he's so much about, hey, Neil, how's the best running back in the country? Hey, Chris, how's the best safety in the? I mean, that's what he is, and it's a lot of he does this whole screaming and hollering. It's false bravado. He's very loose, and so if you have the wrong staff and the wrong leadership in the locker room, it will implode, or it can explode in a positive way. Last year it exploded. This year you had a lot of players, some of defensively, that were basically shunned by Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini basically came in and said, in so many words, I watched your defense. You guys were soft. You stunk last year. I'm here running the defense now. We're doing it my way. And that led to some guys leaving early. And the ones that stayed weren't real happy. So the attitude was, okay, I got to play here, and I'm getting ready to prepare for the league. It's kind of what they've played like. And now some of them have picked it up, but it's all about kind of individualized, and then offensively, they're just not good. Yeah. Miles Brennan went down. They're not as well coached. They're not as well. To sum it up, they're not nearly as talented as they were last year, and they're not nearly as well coached. And there's no discipline. There's no real organization, because that's not Ed. Ed is a facilitator. So it's going to be like a seesaw. It's either going to be hit or miss depending upon his staff that he puts together. Give him credit for, he inherited Aranda, but he put Joe Brady. Now, he wasn't the guy that found Joe Brady, but he hired him.
Sure, absolutely.
And he did it, and he deserved it. And he brought in Joe Burrow, and he sold it. That's what he does. And it worked. Now this is what you get with him. Now, I would think that at some point it'll level out and it'll be somewhere in between, but you're not going to – it's not like Ed can go in and fix it. Ed doesn't know how to fix it. When he hired Matt Canada, that blew up in his face, and it became a disaster. Hired Joe Brady, was great. And, so that's what you're getting. And so the Terrence Marshall opting out, I'm like, man, he's a baller. He's a player. There's a number of guys on that team that have individual talent, but they're playing like individuals, and they have all year long. And that's kind of reflective of what this team is. And I do think there were problems there. There were absolute problems. Ed doesn't have a lot of polish. You can't, if you're the head coach and you're dealing with the issues that we had with the social injustice, you can't sit there and kind of make it known that you're buddies with Trump, which was kind of a little bit overstated, but they kind of hit it off when they went to the White House and yada yada. You don't do that. You have to play that down, because you have to understand the very guys that you're recruiting and the very guys that you're coaching think differently. And that's why I always say I'm not someone that likes to talk politics, because what I think doesn't matter. What I think might offend you out there. And I don't want to do that. And you've got to be mindful of that. And I think Ed sometimes felt like, well, he's president, I better do this. And I'm going to tell you, that was a big turnoff. And a lot of those guys kind of turned their nose and said, I don't know if this is a guy that I want to go to the wall against. And when you bring in Bo Pelini, and Bo Pelini's basically cutting those guys down, some of those guys are saying, we did win the effing championship last year, so we ain't dogs. And where the hell were you? You were at Youngstown State. And so that is, in essence, kind of what's happened there and why it's so bad. And I think it could get a lot worse the next 3 weeks because of who they're playing. Alabama and Florida could be just out and out embarrassments. And then I think for them, a loss to Ole Miss would be, that'd be like more embarrassing. I think they expect to lose to Florida and Alabama. I think they probably think they can beat Ole Miss, and I'm not sure that they will.
We'll look real quick at this weekend's games coming up. First, I do want to tell you that we're brought to you in part by Blue Sky. Blue Sky believes in being fast, fresh, and friendly throughout the thoughtful layout and cleanliness of their stores. Blue Sky hopes to provide customers with a fast and easy buying experience from services to products. Blue Sky plans to keep things fresh and always provide the freshest flavors of their brand name products and the best services available. They even bring in some of the newest products on the market to their stores to provide an even better customer experience. A smile can say it all, and Blue Sky wants to show their customers that they care about them and their shopping experience. They'll always strive to improve their efforts to accomplish exactly that. So check out Blue Sky today at any one of their 48 store locations across the Southeast. All right, we've got pretty full slate of games this week in the SEC. Texas A&M is at Auburn. Huge game for the Aggies. As we mentioned, it's a game they absolutely have to have. An interesting game in Columbia, Missouri. I saw where Sam Pittman said his team's finally back to something resembling full strength. So they go to Como to play the Red Hot Tigers.
Speaking of Coach of the Year, if it's those two, that may mean the difference here.
Maybe they'll fight it out at midfield.
Well, trust me, that's not a fight. Big Sam and Eli looks like he's belongs in the chemistry lab.
Florida at Tennessee.
Remember when? That used to be really something.
The Peyton Manning days when this was.
Oh, it's something now. It's something else now.
Vanderbilt at Georgia is something else.
Oh, God.
On at Kentucky, no thank you. I just, nope, not watching that one. And then the one that a lot of people are going to look at, Alabama at LSU. Prime time game on CBS. And there are rumblings in Tuscaloosa, Chris, that this is a game that even though it's not what it usually has been the last decade or so, this is one that Alabama has had circled for quite some time. Alabama's not big on revenge. That's not who they are. But they did not like that leaked video out of the locker room in Tuscaloosa last year, and I have a feeling that Ed Orgeron's going to pay for those words.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of what I was talking about. Some of that stuff gets said in every locker room. That tells you what lack of discipline you have when a player feels it's okay to take out a cell phone and shoot that and let that go.
Yeah.
How many plays, that doesn't happen. That happens a lot, meaning the comments. It doesn't get out. It's known. That tells you a lot there. That to me, it told me a lot. It was controlled, and it was a non-issue because they were so talented and on the field they were fine. But that's a precursor to little things that I see. And look, that was the first sign that Antonio Brown got run out of Pittsburgh too when he did the same thing. You just don't do those things.
Things that don't happen in Tuscaloosa.
You don't see that happen there. I guarantee you. And I'm telling you, there's some things said in those locker rooms that about it just doesn't. It's kept in that locker room. You're right. I think if there's a chance to kind of make it ugly, they will.
Spartan Barton is going to give us the teaser to get to. We're going to tape on Thursday. Actually, Chris has something going on Friday, so we'll tape on Thursday at 9 a.m. So just 48 hours from now, we'll get back together. And one of the things we'll talk about, Chris, is there any chance that Auburn upsets A&M? And if Auburn were to upset A&M, how would Auburn do it? The other game that would be upset worthy, of course, would be if there's any way at all that Tennessee could find enough of themselves to give Florida a contest. That that could shake the race a little bit, I suppose. Although all Florida's got to do is win because they get their shot against Alabama one way or the other. And then we'll talk about LSU and Alabama and about just how bad it could get. And if it goes, I mean, look, Ed Orgeron's not getting fired this season, even if they lose out. But we could talk about what it means for going into next season if this season ends badly, where it feels like it's completely falling apart. Ed Orgeron said yesterday he's going to win another championship at LSU. I'll ask you on Thursday if Ed Orgeron is going to prove to be prophetic, how will he go about doing that? So there'll be a number of things that we'll touch on when we get back together on Thursday morning. Thanks to all of you for being in the thread. A bunch of you.
Yeah, great job, guys. Appreciate everybody participating in that.
And
subscribe to our Twitch channel. Absolutely. Make sure you do that.
And don't forget, Chris has at Landry Football, LandryFootball.com. He's got game previews, reviews, film, all sorts of things as we get to really some of the fun time of the year when we start talking about coaching changes and stuff getting shook up. We'll turn some of our attention to recruiting here soon, the signing period 2 weeks from Wednesday. So a lot for us to get to here on SEC football and beyond. Thanks to all of you for being with us. For Chris Landry, I'm Neil McCready. We'll be back with you later this week for another edition of the show. Until then, stay safe, take care. Talk to you soon.